Everybody, thanks for joining us today with the Veterans Wealth Network. We have a really special guest today. His name is Andy Nelson. Andy is an Army veteran, and he is a copyright attorney. I just found him to be really interesting. One of the most interesting things about Andy was just exactly how he went about planning out his life, really. He joined the Army so he could help fund his college education. I just thought him to be incredibly intentional and wanted to introduce him to you guys. So with that said, before we get started, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. With that said, let's get started. All right, the gang's all here. How's it going, Andy?
Great. How you doing, Barry?
Good. And this is my my partner, Nick Roop with Commonwealth Financial Group. You guys all know Nick.
Hey, everyone. Andy, how's it going?
Great. How are you, Nick?
Good.
So, guys, before we let Andy go off on a tear here, let me just give you a little bit of background. I met Andy through a group of professionals that refer business back and forth with each other. And what immediately stood out to me was that, he, first of all, very intentional, very, professional, loved his background on Zoom. And it left no question in my mind that he was somebody that I wanted to talk to further, because as you all know, at least if you listen to any of the videos of Nick and I, we always talk about how when we got out of the Marine Corps, as soon as they realized we weren't going to re-enlist, it was like we could feel the boot on our ass. They do everything to sweet talk you until all of a sudden you decide that you don't want to stay in, and then you're out on your own. And I think all of our experiences are a little different. For me, I was only 21 years old after serving 4 years, and although I was a man, there was a lot I needed to learn. Whereas with Andy, I think that you're going to find that he was very, very intentional on everything that he wound up doing. And so we're going to talk about that for a minute. So with that said, Andy, one of the things that you pointed out to me when you and I initially met was that, you wanted to go to college. Seemed like the best way to fund that would be by going into the Army. And I just wonder, what was it about the Army specifically that made you want to join the Army? And then how did you see that translating into the career that you have now as a copyright attorney?
Oh, boy. Great question. I hope this is the same answer I gave you before, Barry. It may be as simple as the Army was the first one to give me a call. Okay. My junior year of high school. They start making the rounds, and I recall I got that call from Sergeant Llewellyn, give me a ring and said, hey, and I'm pretty sure in the first 30 seconds, the question, what are you going to do for college, came up, and I hadn't thought about that for 1 minute. So that's how I came to be in the Army. I got on that rail and kept going with it. But don't get me wrong, the recruiting office down in Renton, Washington had all 4 services in it, plus probably the Coast Guard as well. And I was pulling flyers and looking at the booklets, and I was checking them all out, getting the stickers, and I flirted with them all, to be sure. But for a variety of reasons, I stuck with the Army, and that's where I went. And then how did that translate to where I got you today? Well, that's probably a longer story, but I guess if I had to kind of take kind of macro elements, so to speak, it really got me focused in the Army, and I imagine the other services would have done it too. It got me focused in that I know it, what a mission is, know how to set goals and ways to get there, even if you don't write them down and think about them consciously all the time. They're in the back, they're in the back, and you kind of know how to get from point A to point B or C or whatever it is, maybe just a little bit more efficiently. And so that got me going, and that got me from phase line to phase line to phase line, and where I am today.
Nice. Nick, why don't you, I know that you wanted to talk to Andy and ask him a couple of questions about, exactly the financial journey. Why don't you go ahead and take over, brother.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Barry. One of the things that jumps out to me, and Andy, I know we were talking on it a little bit before. I find that most folks, when they're going to make that transition out of the military, they tend to be very underprepared. So did you go in knowing that it was going to be a stepping stone? Was it always a kind of a foreign done type of mentality, or how do you go through financially preparing yourself to make that transition as easy as possible on you?
Oh boy. Nick, I guess I'll just quickly tell my story. My story, as Barry mentioned at the beginning, going in the Army certainly was, fulfilled a, childhood dream that never left of being in the service or a service. Didn't know what it was going to be all those years. Ended up being in the Army. I probably rotated through them all as a kid, in terms of what I liked. But once I kind of realized, hey, okay, now's the time for me to get my head on straight, figure out what my interests are, really explore my interests, join the Army. I had a loose goal. I mean, the goal was I'm going to do my 3 years, I had the option as an infantryman of going 2, 3, or a 4-year contract. I split the difference. I split the money as well, I guess, right? Because the GI Bill is the same amount, but the Army College Fund at the time, I'm not sure what they call it now. It was a mid-range amount of money. And I had the idea that when I'm done, I'll drive back all the way to Seattle, Washington, and I'll start school there, start locally, and stay with my parents. So I had an idea that I would at least be on some decent footing. My parents were going to charge me rent, and they'd probably feed me, that sort of thing. I didn't ask them. We didn't have conversations about this. I guess I just assumed it. I guess I turned out to be right. It could have gone the other way. So that put me on, a good footing, so to speak. I was probably still paying off the car that I bought in the Army, because I think everybody in the military somehow, you're going to make one major purchase, it's probably going to be that automobile, and I had myself, the college money that came out was enough. I mean, it was enough and then some to cover my costs. And I got a part-time job as well, so just for a little bit of extra money. So just a few different things to make sure that all of a sudden I wasn't paying massive amounts of rent, didn't really have an idea. I mean, in the military, you're not incurring those costs. You're incurring food costs. I mean, you're going to Burger King and stuff like that, but you're not buying groceries and that sort of thing. Some are, I get it. I mean, if you live off base and that sort of thing, but most single soldiers or single service people are probably not doing that. So, it was as simple as that for me to get on decent footing. So all of a sudden I didn't walk into college and have massive amounts of debt, different facets going forward.
And now, as you're navigating that, right, and you made the transition from being in the Army to going to college, at what point did you choose your specialization within law?
Boy, that happened probably after my second year in law school. So, for those who don't know, I mean, I spent 4 years in undergrad up at University of Washington. I went to a community college first, as a matter of fact. So I saved some money there. Then I transitioned over to University of Washington for my last 2 years. Didn't know I was going to even go to law school until almost at the end. Then I got into law school, and I still didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what interested me. And when Barry and I talked about before, I told him when I went to the law school I went to, I had an interest in government affairs or something in government. I thought that's the route I was going to go. And, as my interests developed and morphed and changed, eventually that wasn't interesting. So I think in my second year in law school, I took a survey course. I think I got the book on my shelf here still. It's kind of an overview course of unfair competition and intellectual property and that sort of thing. And I really liked that. That spoke to me, because I thought, wait a minute, brands and things like that. This is stuff I watched on TV as a kid, cartoons and this stuff I can relate to. And I don't have a creative bone in my body myself, so I can draw a complete stick figure. That's a success. But here's a way all of a sudden where I can actually kind of get involved through law in this creative process. And that was kind of interesting to me. So it was really that second year that really pushed me that direction.
That's awesome. And at a certain point, right, you obviously graduated from law school. Then what? What was that path to ultimately being where you are today?
Yeah. I would love to say that this was all planned out, but it's funny how these things happen. I was in Northern California in Sacramento. That's where I was in law school. And my plan at that point, before I even went down there, was to return to Washington State. We'll return to Washington State. I'll take the bar there, and I'll live near home or something along those lines. But, as it happened, I had a great job lined up in the Bay Area, in Redwood City out there, which is, near Silicon Valley, perhaps part of it. I don't know exactly. And I was not going to pass that by. It was there staring me in the face. So I went, I went out west, further west from Sacramento, went to the Bay Area, got a job doing exactly what I wanted to do. And yeah, I'd love to say that's all she wrote, but no, as it happens, a couple years later, I fall in love with somebody and I decided to chase her down here into Southern California, sight unseen. Hadn't been to Southern California other than one time as a kid for Disneyland. And, moved down here and, it was a little bit tough finding a job, but that was 2003. And I have been in, Irvine, Costa Mesa, Orange County, California ever since. So, here I am today. And if I can find a way to not leave, I'm going to do it because I like this area a lot.
That's awesome. And now, as you're going through and making the transition to ultimately continue to build the wealth that I'm sure that you kind of had in mind when you set off to go to law school, right? What are some things that you learned along the way, being invested, from the sounds of it, for 20 years or so now?
Oh boy. Well, what I've learned is, one thing I wish I would have had is better financial literacy training as a younger person. And I have heard rumors and, anecdotes about how that's becoming more and more pushed these days. I don't know if that's true or not. And of course, I saw that in Florida, right? I think the governor there I don't know the exact contours of the law, but I thought I saw that it was becoming a requirement now. And I'm assuming at the high school level or something like that. I think that's a fantastic idea. Because as Barry mentioned in conversation before, talking about checkbooks and that sort of thing. I remember learning in basic training. I think some drill sergeant kind of told an anecdote about how some people, they had to instruct us that just because you have checks in your checkbook does not mean you have money in your account, which I personally thought was funny because I'm thinking, okay, I know that much, but to think that some people don't know that, wow, yikes. So, I thought I had some basic understandings how not to get yourself in trouble. Okay, maybe I have a few times, but I wish I would even had more training, more of it shoved at me. So I would tell anybody early on. I know sometimes maybe financial advisors or wealth management people, maybe they don't want to. Maybe they don't want to, or you don't think they're going to want to talk to you early on. But I think a lot of them will and want to, and I think it's a good resource for anybody, and I wish others would do it. Now, I know you didn't ask me for my recommendations to other people necessarily, more about me, but I'm telling you, based on what I did not do, I think it's a very, very smart idea, because a lot of us, including myself, can be subject to the mentality of thinking that you can always, kick the can down the road, kick it down the road, and next thing you know, it's 5-10 years later, and thinking, man, how much longer am I going to kick this down the road? I don't have that much. So.
No, what you're saying is something I hear all the time, right? Clients that are coming in that are 45, 50 years old, they always say, I wish I would have started 20 years ago. So yeah. that lines up. Anything else, Andy, that you think it would be important to share just about your journey, or anything else you wish you would have known starting out, finance or otherwise, that would have had a positive impact on you going through and making those transitions you've made?
This is kind of a broad response to that, Nick, but what I would say is there's another lesson by something I did not do, and that is I did not seek out a mentor when I was younger, or maybe I'll change it up a little bit. I'm reluctant, even today, but certainly when I was younger, to ask other people for help. And I think a lot of us do that. We think, one, especially if you're exiting the service, you learn to be self-reliant if you are not already. And you want to continue. I mean, it's just built in, or it's been trained or pressed upon you, I should say. And we don't do it, and we also probably think that other people are unwilling, or we're bothering people, right? They're not going to help. I don't want to put anybody out. But I'll tell you, my experience is, some people don't have time, and if they don't, they'll say no. But a lot of people are very, very willing to help, and people can benefit from that. Now, don't get me wrong, you can get all kinds of bad advice too, and it's hard to say. It may be difficult to know if you're getting, something that's going to send you down the wrong path. But ask different people, ask multiple people for help. There are folks that can give a lot of great guidance and are happy to share it with you. So that's something I wish I would have done more of. And I would certainly tell everybody, just do it. Just make the ask.
That's funny that you brought that up, because Nick and I did an episode all about the importance of mentorship on another episode for the Veterans Wealth Network. And to your point, Andy, I think it also has to do with pride. I'll speak for myself, is that I wound up getting recruited to Clearwater, Florida. And I had a client who was a Marine recon captain, retired Marine Corps recon captain. And he took me around, he took a real interest in me, and he used to take me around and introduce me to all of his doctor clients, to try and help me get business. And in 1989, he told me, Barry, and I didn't even consider him a mentor at the time. In hindsight now, I realize he was mentoring me.
Yeah.
But he said, Barry, I want you to go and take $10,000 and go buy stock in this company called Microsoft. And this was before Windows ever came out. And he said, I want put that $10,000 in there and don't ever touch it. Forget that you even have it. And I was too embarrassed to tell him that I didn't know how to invest in the stock market. I was 28 years old at the time, 29, I think. And he was supposed to be my client. So I was trying to impress him. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. That sounds great, Rory, And now that $10,000 in Microsoft would be worth over $16 million today had I taken this guy's advice. And,
I hope you don't dwell on that one too much then.
I've had a series of mistakes throughout the years that I've made because I was either too prideful or too embarrassed. I came from a very modest background. My mom worked 2 jobs to take care of us. And, we didn't really have money growing up. And it seemed like I was always trying to act as if, act like you are somebody and you will become somebody. And I wished I would have, had somebody in my life that was a mentor that could have gave me the real scoop, and that's kind of what we're doing with the Veterans Wealth Network. We're not really here to sell anything to anybody. What we're trying to do is to bring interesting people like you that have an experience that is worth sharing. And hopefully the people that are watching this will be able to relate to it in some way or another, or maybe they know somebody in their life that will be able to relate to it. But man, you brought up some really good points. Anything else, Nick, that you want to throw in there after listening to that? Because I know I could see sparks coming out of both of us at the same time. Go ahead.
No, what you said, Andy, and Barry, you as well, I say it all the time, right? If your car breaks down, you take it to a mechanic, right? That's a given. If you need legal advice, you go see a lawyer. If you need to talk to someone about buying a home, you're going to contact a loan officer or a realtor. If you need help with your finances, though, you keep it to yourself. That's just the way in which it works. And again, to your point, Barry, I think that there's a lot of pride that's involved in that. And also to your point, we're here to help, right? Even if we don't necessarily have all the answers, chances are we're going to know someone that does. And that's what it's about, putting you in front of those people, getting them exposure to possibilities they didn't even know existed, right? How many other service members are out there that didn't even know about copyright law? That's a possibility that they could go off and pursue, right? So I love what we have going on so far. And Andy, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Barry. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think, with that said, the one thing I would like to end with, and this was, I know you guys can't tell, but I'm the oldest one in this room right now. And the one thing I struggled for years with was killing my ego. Ego is not a good thing. Confidence is a good thing, but confidence and ego have nothing to do with each other. And pride comes from ego. There's just so if you can somehow or another try and remove that portion of you as a human being, it opens up doors and opportunities that you wouldn't imagine were there before. I mean, there's been people in my life where I thought to myself, like, you know, what is this person going to teach me? Because my ego was so big that I didn't see the fact that, you know, this person actually had a lot to teach me. I just was letting that stand in my way. So, yeah, man, wow. This is, you know, I always hope for something really great to come out of this. And that was definitely one of them. Thank you, Andy, for being here with us today. And before we end it, I just kind of want to talk about your practice real quick. Like,
Sure.
what if somebody is in need of a copyright or a trademark attorney? Like, what is it specifically that we should be looking out for when one of our friends or family or coworkers or somebody who's watching this, they should look out for, that where they would need somebody like you?
Yeah, it's not hard if you think, you know, if you are thinking about, you know, you're an individual and you're thinking, man, I got an idea, you know, I have an idea, and it may be for, you know, an invention, or it may be I got this great idea for the name of a business, or the name of a product, or the name of a service, or an image for this service, or this great amount of content. I've got this great collection of photos I want to create, or this great artwork, or this digital course. You know, it's the ideas. You know, if you have an idea, it's the time to maybe talk to a professional, because one, you need to know if it's something that's protectable and you can exploit. On the flip side, you need to have an idea about whether you are actually going to be stepping on someone else's toes and actually walk yourself into trouble before you get going. So it's as simple as that. I have an idea, or you know, someone has the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know, that you know, balloons into related answers, related questions. That's the time.
Well, that's great. And, you know, one of the things I learned from you that I did not know before was there's such a thing as a copyright infringement on something that isn't exactly, you know, copyrighted. It's just reminds you of something that is copyrighted, like taking the golden arches and, you know, turning them upside down to a W instead of an M,
Yeah.
you know, can get you in trouble. And, you know,
True.
so that's another thing, you know, for if you're out there and you're like going, hey, you know, I want to create the next Nike. Well, you know, if you call it Pikey and you still have that swoosh, you're in trouble, you know. So
it is a
definitely
belief.
want to contact Andy for that.
It is a commonly held belief that the slightest changes makes all the difference in the world. And it's not quite that simple. True.
Yeah, nice. Well, Andy, thank you for your service, first of all. You know,
Thank you. Likewise.
I'm so grateful to you to do this with us today. And I know everybody who's watching this is going to get something out of it. And Nick, as always, brother, love you, man. Appreciate you coming on here and doing this. Anything you want to end with, Nick?
The kids are here, and so I'm going on mute.
Okay. All right. Well, with that said, guys, everybody have a wonderful day, wonderful week, wonderful year. And if you didn't get something out of this, but you know somebody who did, or if you got something out of this and you want to share this, please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell, and share this with them. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.